create fancy report. But before Power BI come to play, I start using SSRS, and behind the scene I start using SSAS, analysis services. And then initially it was analysis service, multidimensional, then start the tabular model, right? And then when we do the Power BI reportings, before we do the Power BI reporting, there were a lot of tools which work with the analysis service tabular models. I use a lot of tools like the one I'm going to choose, like the AML, Toolkits, Tabular Editor, DAX Studio, all those tools I use, I actually use with the tabular model, so the SSAS tabular model. But what happens is in 2020 July, Power BI officially announced that they support external tools with the Power BI. That's where this external tools comes to a picture and people start checking what is this external tool, what this new tab is all about, right? So let me explain how it works actually. So Power BI, if you check the engine of the Power BI, the modeling engine is actually still is SSAS tabular engine, right? If you actually check, the visualization is separate and the modeling part is still done in SSAS tabular model. So all those tools we used to work with tabular model still work with the Power BI. So what these people did was they got those third-party tools and they enabled the XMLA protocol, which means that you can read and write your tabular model behind the scene what's available in the Power BI. Then you can manipulate the Power BI models. So all this tool I'm going to show, what they use is either they use XMLA or there's a DLL given by Microsoft called Tabular Model Object, TMO. If you're coming from the coding background, there was AMO which we used to do the coding related to the multidimensional, and they have enhanced the TMO, which means that you can write code, you can read the properties and write the properties of a tabular model. So you can use as TMO to do the coding against Power BI as well as a tabular model. Right? That's what all those tools does, right? So the next question is, okay, we have external tools available. How do you show these external tools available in your ribbon? So for that, what you have to do is it's very simple. If you have a tool available and you have installed in your machine, you need, if it's not coming by default, what you have to do is you have to create a JSON file, just a text file, and you have to register these properties. One is tool name, what's the name of your tool. This is the example of the AML toolkit that I've used. So you have the version tag and you have the name and you have a description and the most important path where your exe file is, which actually open up your external tool, and then arguments, which is the server and database by default in most cases, and your icon which you are going to display. If you don't have external tools available by default in your ribbon, you can use this JSON and you can put that JSON, rename it as tbi2.json and put it into the following under the location. And then Power BI will pick up that information and it will display the external tool is available in the ribbon. Okay. Then the next question is, this is not the magic. You can also develop your own external tools. If you have a .NET or coding background, what you have to do is you can use tabular object model DLL, which allow you to read those properties like the database models, data sources, tables, columns, all those properties can be read from your .NET code, and then you can change those properties, right? So if you have a .NET background, you can use TMO, or again, if you're coming from the data engineering background, SSAS tabular model has DMVs, which allow you to get information about your queries. So if you execute a DMV, if you can select statement against DMV, it will give you how many measures available in your model, how many columns available in your model. So you can query those DML and then you can get the information out of that. So this is what all those tools have done. It allows you to read and write all those information behind the scene, right? So slide wise, that's pretty much it. We'll go to the demo and we'll show you what we can do from these tools, right? So my demo is actually, I have a database. I actually have used a Contoso retail data warehouse database. And for my demo, I'm going to use Fact Sales Online, which has 12.6 million records. And I'm going to create a model as an import mode, combining all those dimensions related to the Fact Online sales. The simple model. And what I want to try to do is actually clean model, effective model, and document that model and then deploy that model to the service with minimum time. Right? That's the important thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I want to do it correctly, and I want to spend very minimum time, right? Cool. First thing, I want to tell you that all the tools that I'm going to talk, you can download it from the internet freely, but those tools are in different locations. But if you go to the SQL BI/tools, you know that if you're using Power BI, SQL BI website is more like a Microsoft website for us. Like they have all those materials, anything about the DAX. So under there, they have tabs called tools. Inside the tools, you can see all those applications, all those external tools available there. You just click on this and you can go to the respective download sites, right? Cool. So what again, I'll show you what I'm going to do. I have a Contours retail data warehouse, right? And I have a fact online sales, which has 12.5 million records. And then I have set up dimensions, and I'm going to create a model using this. So this is the first step. So because it takes some time, I think I already have created a model which has dimensions, all those tables as it is, and I have my fact online sales. So this is how it is as of right now, right? So next thing, I have installed 4 external tools: AML Toolkit, DAX Studio, Power BI Help, and Tabular Editor. So these are the ones that I'm going to demo, and I'm going to show you how you can use and different capabilities of these tools. Right. So the first thing, the problem I have, if I open my model file, its model is actually 725 MB file. So you all know that maximum size of the Power BI Pro is 1 GB. And if I have a 700 MB file right now, because I have 12 million records, if I publish this one and if I start refreshing it, it takes a lot of time. There's a possibility that you get an errors with the refresh. And even if you want to publish it, it takes a lot of time, right? So 700 MB is not a good size for my model. So what I want to do is I want to check whether I can minimize my model size. Right? But by the look of it, I have no clue how to minimize this size of my model. Yeah.
Can you make the screens just a fraction smaller?
Can I make smaller? What do you mean?
Because we can't see the bottom. So we don't know what you're doing.
Okay, I don't think I can do that. Does it matter? Like I don't do it. Okay. Yeah. So because I don't think I can make it smaller. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. If anything is missing, just let me know. Yep. So yeah. So my model is this size, and then I want to get an information about whether I can make this model small. To do that, I need to have information about how much each column or the table takes storage in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using DAX Studio. So I'll have a brief introduction to DAX Studio again, but first thing I want to do is I'm going to the DAX Studio and going to advanced, and there's something called view metrics. So this is actually something called Vertipack Analyzer. So Vertipack Analyzer, what it does is like it gives you information about my model. So if you can see that, the biggest table I have is fact online sales, right? And it takes actually 99.28 of total data volume I have in my model. Right? So one table, obviously, like it's the 12.6 million records, right? We expect it to be the biggest table. But not only that, it gives me information about how each column take space in my model. Right? If you can see that, these first 3 columns is actually taking, the first column itself take 50%, 51% of my total data volume inside my model. And you can see that this test ID column or the checksum or the online sales key, which is a primary key of my fact table, I'm not using this column for my analysis, nor my business users. I don't want these columns, right? But still, because these columns are there in the database, I extracted all the table is present in my data model. So this is case for all of us. We just don't check the columns what's available. We just take the whole table and we don't know how much it takes when it comes to space. Right. I'll show you what happens if I delete all those 3 columns which I don't want from my model. Right. So simply I go there. Right. Remember it was 700 MBs in here. So I'm going my factor online sales. I'm going to delete this column, which is checksum. And then I'm going to delete my Fact online test ID column, which I don't want to. And there's another column called online sales key, which is again I'm not going to use to, right? So this will not affect my analysis. This will not affect anything, any reporting I'm going to do, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file.
Can I just try one?
Yeah. Ah. Yep.
You're recording it, but we can't see it.
Oh.
So then we know what tools you're using, see?
Is it the same one? Yeah. So I was checking the wrong file actually. There's another file in here. So what happens is initially it was 700 MBs. Now it changes to 42 MB. So remember how much volume it took from 725 MB to it changes to 42 MB. So it's the case for you as well. Just check how much volume each column takes from the multi-pack analyzer and check whether you want these columns. If it's, especially when you have like integer non-compressed columns, you know that Tabular engine works as a columns and try to compress it. And if you have a column which cannot be compressed like GUIDs and integers, which no longer can be compressed, which you have a lot of unique values, then it takes the most volume. So with that information, you can basically change your data model to very small size, which is very easy to, handle, as well as very easy to refresh, right? So we'll come back to the rest of the DAX Studio again. Now I'm good. If I go to the re-import the view metrics again, it will refresh and you will see that it will not, the percentage is the same, but you don't see all those columns available right now, right? I'm going to close this one. I'll come back to again.
I have a question from chat window. If
Yep.
the column is deleted in Power BI stage, wouldn't it still load in Power Query?
If you delete it from there, it will not load for the Power Query.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. So the next question is, because from what I understand, it's actually go back to the Power Query side and it's delete the column when you load the data, right? So it will not load. Next thing, okay, I have the model, I have a smaller size. I want to make it look nice. I want to make it, good for the business user. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Tabular Editor, right? So Tabular Editor is a very nice, very cool tool that I use. If you see when I open it, it says that experimental Power BI features are enabled. The reason is I have specifically go to the preference and say that I want certain features which are still in the experimental stage and not supported by Microsoft. How do you do that? I'm going to click OK. You to go to the files, and that's called preference, and there's something called allow support unsupported Power BI feature experiment. So if you check it, you will have full features available in the tabular model to you to work out. But there's a risk that there could be possibility that you might break certain things. So best thing is when you use this one, take a backup of your model and start working with the tabular model, because tabular model is actually, it edits your model, right, out of the Power BI. So I have enabled this one. The first thing I want to do is like, as you can see, there are a lot of columns available and I don't want my business user to see all those keys, right? So for that, if I use the Power BI, I have to go one by one column and I have to hide those columns. So what I'm going to do is, right, rather than doing that, I'm going to use Tabular to hide my columns. What you can do is select all the columns you want, press Control and select all the keys. Basically, I don't want my business user to see any keys, and go to the maybe whatever the metadata like ETL load date, load days, update date. I don't want any of those columns to see for my business user, right? Just simply click Control I and it will hide here.
Sorry, click.
Sorry, it's press Control I, or you just can right click and say hide it, right? So I use the shortcut.
I'm a right click person.
Yeah, so you can do that. If you go to the date dimension, go to the date key, and what else I don't want to. I'll show how you do in the right click. Okay, I just want this one. Right click in here and make invisible. So you can see the shortcut as well, right? So you can make it invisible. Cool. Done.
Invisible.
Yeah, just invisible. Just in our Power BI word, just to hide the column. And let's go to the dim store. I'm going to do the same to here. All the keys. No, I don't want any of those keys. Maybe entity keys. What else I don't want here? Maybe geometry. I'm not going to do analysis. Okay, and maybe update date and load date. These are metadata columns which business user will not going to use. Control I, Go to the product key, descriptions. I don't want any of this ID to business user. These are my metadata columns or the columns available in my data warehouse. I don't want any URL to be available. Yeah, none of these I don't want to. So very quickly, I'm just going through my models and selecting things I don't want to, like this.
What's the end report going to be for?
I just want to make a proper model in a quick time. That's my idea. So I extract the data and I'm going to make a good model, clean model to the end business user, right? So Control I, and then currency. I don't want any of these columns. Okay, Control I. Okay, go here. I don't want this. What else I don't want over here? Maybe, yeah, none of this as well. So if I go to, yeah, that's it, right? I have make it hidden in tabular model, but none of these are effective in here. Still things are here. What I have to do is like, I have to make it save to my model. So if you click on this one, what will happen is all those changes I have done in tabular model go back to the Power BI and instantly get updated. If you go to the Power BI model now, none of those columns are available in my model very quickly. But if you go in Power BI, you need to right click everyone, hide it, hide it, hide it, hide it. It takes a lot of time, right? Oh, good. Yeah, cool. Now the next thing I want to do is all those columns, as you can see, these are camel case. So when you give the model the Power BI, they hate camel case. They want to see a business use, business names, right? You have to have a space in middle. That's one thing they actually like to see. For database people, yeah, we don't mind camel case or Pascal case, but for the business user, they don't like it, right? So what I'm going to do is like I want to rename all this and put a space in middle. It will take a lot of time, right? So apart from that, rather than doing that, I have another plan. There's something called advanced scripting available in Tabular Model. And if you go to the Tabular Model website, I'll show you. I can't click on here.
If you click on that double line, you should be able to drag it to the right, where it's got.
I'll go in here, yeah.
No, the connected to the hub.
This one?
On the double line.
Oh, here. Yep. Yeah. So in here, there are a heap of script that this actually what it does is like, if you are coming from a .NET background, it has created a wrapper object, wrapper class, which actually allow you to write code on top of your tabular model object, which means that if you go here, you can say that selected dot, you have all those columns, right? For example, if I say this one, and if I say selected dot column dot name, I can say that Asanka. And if I run this one, you need to, I'll check this one, maybe something I'm not going to use in here, something like this. And I can run this one. What will happen is it's actually going to rename this object. So run this one. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so run this one. It's going to rename it as Asanka. So then if you're writing a proper code, you actually can manipulate these properties using tabular model. I'll show how it is done, right? So I'm going to just keep it as it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy a code which I get in from here. Go all the way down here. You will see there's a script written by the tabular model development team called camel case to proper case.
What's the code called?
So I'll show you what it does actually. So if you extract the code, it says that camel case to proper case. It has a description, camel case to proper case, which means that camel case, so which means that the encoding available.
What language is David?
Camel case. Yeah. So the custom worksheet, it will give the custom space, workspace, zip code. This is what I want to give my business user, right? So what I do is I'm going to get this code, right? And I'm going to go to the tabular model. I'm going to paste it here. Right? That's it. That's only thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to write. If you know the coding, you can write this code by yourself. You can manipulate anything you want, but I'm not going to do anything. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select all the measures that I have selected here, columns I selected here, and I'm going to run this one. All right. So instantly it renames to the camel case to proper case. So I can quickly do all those things to my column. All the attributes, I can rename it very quickly. If you start renaming it by yourself, it takes a lot of time, but I just select all this column that I want to, just run this code.
So you do that for each table.
I can do it for each table, each column actually. So because
What if you select all the tables? Could you do it for all tables?
Tables are in higher level. You can do the table as well. The problem is like the probability of you breaking things if you rename the table is high. So I prefer like you either start doing renaming first and then do other stuff later, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question in the chat window, is this C# language?
It is C# language. So it is C#,
That was my
but
question, because I saw you had camel code.
yeah.
But what was it when you renamed it in the advanced scripting? What coding was that?
So this C# code, only thing is like this does not have all the functionality available in C# because this is a wrapper on top of that. So Tabular Engine is they have a C# code in behind, and on top of they have make it easy for most of the developers who don't have a lot of C# knowledge, make it a wrapper. So you don't have all the function availability in here. But if you go to the documentation, you have like is lowercase, is uppercase, those functions are available, which you normally use in C#, right? Cool. So I think I have renamed pretty much all the columns that I want to, and then yeah, let's go.
Another question as well, which is talking about, is it possible to do conditional formatting based on different columns, different conditional format needed?
Yes, you should be able to, because you can use a if statement saying that, okay, if the column name is this, you can set the different formatting. So whatever the properties available over in here, you can set this properties using the C# code, right? You can set the folder, you can say the formatting, you can set anything which is writable using the code, right? So I think I rename all the things that I want to, right? And then again, I'm going to save it into the Power BI. So still not affected, still in the camel case. We'll see what happens if you save it, right? Go back here. Yes. So nice and clean, right? I'll do some refresh because there's a measure effect in this one. So it will be fine, right? So everything is nice and clean. Users can read it. No camel case here, space in middle my columns, all good, right? The next requirement I have is if you're using Power BI, you know that all those are actually columns, not a measure, right? So the problem is like when you have columns and when you start writing a measure using DAX using a column, you always have to specify the default aggregation. For example, if you are creating a new column, you have to calculate sum this column, right? But default aggregation anyways for these columns is sum. You understand what I'm saying? Or if you're analyzing this model in Excel, you cannot analyze a column using Excel. You need to make a default measure, right? So the standard way is what we do is like we normally hide the columns but available and create a default measure on top of that if you're using Power BI. So if I want to do that for all those things, it takes a lot of time, right? Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same script, but this time I have to do slight modification, but this script is also available in here. If you go here you can create a default measure from a column. So what I'm going to do is I've use the same thing and I have saved it in here. Only change I have done is I have added a folder to here. So whatever the measure I'm going to create, I have set up a folder saying measure. Insert all those measures I'm going to create into a folder. That's the only changes I have done, right?
Cool.
What I'm going to do is go back to my factor online sales. These are the measures columns that I'm going to convert into measures, right? All those columns, I'm going to hide these columns and create a default measure on top of that. I'm going to execute this query. So what's gone wrong? Yeah, let's see it. Yeah. So as you can see, my columns are gone. On top of that, I have created a measure. If you see this expression of this measure, you can see that. So this expression, yeah. This is the fact online sales. I have added a description here as well, and I have added a sum operation. What I'll do is like I'll show how it looks in Power BI. So these are the columns still, and then I'm going to deploy my changes to the model, and instantly it create a folder here, and all the columns are gone. I have a measure apart from additional to this. And if you click on this one, you see the formula as well, and everything works perfectly fine. If I drag and drop in here, it works the same way I want it to work. So I take like a couple of seconds and my work, half of my work is done. Cool. The next requirement most of the time I get from my business user is that I want to have a YTD, MTD, QTD, previous year. They all, it doesn't matter how many measures they want all those measures to have all those maybe 5-6 measures to you. Right. You have to create all those things, but you have a solution for that in Tabular Model as well. I'll show how quick and how easy it is. Let's go to Tabular Model. I'm going to open another script, which is again available in the same site, which is add time series measures. What it does is like, it loops through all the, it gets your date dimension, right? Which is, let's see whether there's a date key, I rename it. No. So it goes to your date dimension, and then it take whatever the measure you select, and of the measure, it will create all the time series measures if you want. If you don't want YTD, if you don't want previous year, you just remove that code block and you can still work on the other measures. But in my case, I want to show you that you can create all the time series measures very quickly using Tabular Model. Let's see how quick it is. I'm going to select all these measures. So these are the measures that I want to create time series calculations. I'm going to select, let's take time. Sorry. So I selected all the measures I want, and I want to have time series calculation for each and every measure. Right. So I'm going to execute this one, select all those columns and execute my script. We'll see how it goes. Instantly, it creates all those heap of measures that you wanted, and it will take a lot of time if you want to create it, and all those measures are working perfectly fine. We'll see how it's affecting in the Power BI. Right. Let's save it here. And instantly, did I save it here properly? We'll see. It will take some time to refresh it because I had a lot of measures. Okay. Sorry, I didn't press it. Yep. This comes here, right? So I had it like 50 odd measures, time series measures within a couple of seconds. And if you had to write it all the PTD, YTD by yourself, it will take more than days, right? Whether it's working, we'll see if it's working. Let's take maybe YTD measure. I'm going to add maybe some of return quantity YTD. When you create the date dimension or the time series measures, you always specify the date or some kind of attribute from the date. So the drag and drop the calendar date. So it works. The YTD and everything works. Right. So if you can see the formula as well, whether it's the same way you want to, you can click on here. You can have a total QTD specified, year-on-year expressions, percentage expression, everything is written for you, and it's very easily. Right. So that's that's good thing about the Tabular Model. You can quickly do all those things, normal things you do. Right. The next thing I want to do is I want to see whether my model is standard. So for each company, we have our own standard when we create a Power BI model, right? We have how you do the naming things, whether we are hiding certain columns, whether we want to define the aggregations. So there are heap of tests we want to do whether this is a proper model which is work according to our standard. That's also what something you can do in the Tabular Model. There's something called tools best practice analysis. The good thing in Tabular Model is you can define your own best practice code. How you do that? There is something called best practice analysis, and there's down there there's a heap of documentation of how you define your best practices to your model, right? Once you define it, you can create a JSON file with all those rules. And if you have not defined any rules, what you can do is there's down there, they have given you standard best practices, which most of the people use. You can import that one and check whether your model is work according to the standard best practices. So I have downloaded that one and I'm going to import in here. So manage your best practices and add. There's something called create a new rule files. Sorry. Yep. Include local rule files, and there's a JSON file that I downloaded from here. I'm going to import that one. Here, BPA rule standard. So this has all the rules that I'm going to apply and see whether it works. So there are a lot of rules like whether you want to avoid divisions, you can ask the divide function for that one, and you can check the formatting, you can check the metadata. If you want to check again your model against all of this, you can check, or if you can uncheck it, you don't want, for example, like avoid camel case, the one I said, right? So you can select all those and go and see whether it's working. If you go to the best practice analysis, it will show that, okay, these are the things that violate your best practices analysis within your model, right? Not only that, the one good thing is you actually can fix it in here. For example, I'm going to select one thing that I mostly struggle is when you have a column which has a numeric one, Power BI by default make it aggregatable, right? For example, you have weight, when something like maybe some product code or maybe the calendar day, calendar year, which is a numeric, but as you can see here down to the date, these are aggregated. If you drag and drop the calendar month, it has a number aggregated from the Power BI, which you don't want to, right? You don't want to set aggregate. What we normally do is we go in here and we go to there saying that do not do summarizations. But I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore all those rules. I'm going to just select the one which says that there's one called don't summarize numeric columns. So I'm going to ignore all these rules and only specify this one so that I can have a look on this one. It says that all those columns which has numbers by default aggregated, right? So do you want to do that or not? Obviously, I don't want to do that. But there are some columns that actually I want to aggregate, even if it's a number. For example, like let's go, let's select everything. And I want to say that number of car owns, number of children at home, these things, total children, I actually want to aggregate. Drag and drop this, I can see a total number of cars, total number of children that I want to aggregate actually. But things like weight, fiscal years, calendar years, these are things that I don't actually aggregate. I just want to see it as a numeric values within my visualization, right? So what I'm going to do is like, let's see, is there anything else? Yearly income, not, I don't want to, discount percentage, none of these are aggregatable for me. Maybe this is aggregatable. Store manager, no, I don't want to aggregate. So what I'm going to do is like right click in here, you can apply a fix. So not only it gives you the problem, it gives you a fix as well. Let's see what happens when you apply a fix, right? Let's fix it. I'm going to close this one.
So is this still part of shrinking?
Sorry?
Is this still part of shrinking as well?
No, so what I'm going to do is like I'm going to ignore the aggregation for those columns. So if I'm going to do it in Power BI model, I have to go each and individual columns and say that do not summarize these columns.
What if along the line you get down to a point, oh, maybe I should have had that.
Yeah, so you can come back to the Power BI model and you can set it again. Just too easy. But the problem is like if I have to, set it one by one, it takes a lot of time. And in here, like I just Power BI best practice analysis shows me that there's an issue and as well as it allow you to fix it, right? So let's save it in here. Have a look in this one. You have seen all those things are aggregated sign here. I'm going to apply it quickly. Fix that tabular model given to me, right? All those are gone, right? So easily. None of these are now aggregatable, and apart from the one I actually selected. So that easy. Yeah.
So with that, you had the rules defined in a set,
yes.
In a text file.
Yes.
The fix that was applied.
Fix is defined by them actually. It's not.
By,
yeah.
Tabular editing.
From my understanding, but I'm not sure.
That wasn't in your definition.
That wasn't in my definition. Yeah. From my understanding. So I think what they do is like for standard rules, they have given a fix, right? But I think, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe you can define a fix as well. I don't know. I have to check and see. Yeah. Cool. So that's all good. I think my measures are now clean. I don't have unwanted aggregations. Guess how many time I have left? How much time I left?
Starts at 5:30. So we see we have like
have 30 minutes. Yep. Cool. Right.
The question here, is there a script? Is there a script apart from best practice rule? Not sure what that is.
A best practice rule is not a script. Actually, it's just a set of rules that you define to check your model. But script is actually, there are a lot of script which basically manipulate your object. So this is where you are. And again, you have a lot of documentation about how you write the queries codes as well. If you want to expert it, there are properties available you want to manipulate, you can manipulate, and how you do that is already explained in here, right? Cool. So that's all done. Proper model here. Everything's cool. What else I can want to do? Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So I'm going to close this one.
Is there a way I'm always a backup person as well. So is there a way of recording or logging what you've done so that if, for example, you weren't here tomorrow and somebody else takes over, and they go, oh my God, half the stuff is missing. Oh, hang on, let's look at the logs or let's look at
Yep. So if you go here, if you go to the views, there's something called
I can see it.
no, there's something called show history. So in here you can it says like what are the changes you have done to the model, right? So awesome. Yeah, so you can have a copy of this one and you can see that okay, these are the changes that I have done to my model, right? Cool.
Because then you show accountability.
Yes.
The boss says, oh, but look at the history.
Yeah, these are the things that I've done. Cool.
Thank you.
Right.
If you don't save that, I think when you close Tabular, that history is gone.
No, that's the thing. So you have to save it here. You can go in here, you can get the copy, the clipboard, and you have to save it here. This
it's not automatically saved anywhere like you would with Word or Excel?
No.
Okay. Yep. But still, at least it's there.
Yeah, I see that. These are changes you have done.
Just like Photoshop, if you make a picture, you close it, you don't save this.
So that's what I'm saying. Like it's always good to take a backup of when you modify your model apart from within the Power BI. So these are the external tools not developed by the Microsoft. These are the tools developed by other people.
Just do a simple flow. When that log changes, make a recording.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. Yep. And you need to make sure that what the changes you do, but you can always, go back, you can press the Control Z and you can change the script and run it again. That feature is there.
Thank you.
Yep. Cool. So that's all good. Next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this one. I'm going to another tool, the one that actually I use a lot. So I have created a measure down here saying that universal sales amount, right? This is my measure. So what it basically does is like if I drag and drop, okay, what did I do? Yeah. So this has a filtration, which is a measure type. So based on the measure type, it actually calculate different numbers like sales amount, sales quantities, discount amount. So if I click on the discount amount, it will show the discount amount. If I say the discount quantities, it shows the discount quantities likewise. So this is just a simple measure based on my selection. It's changed what I want to see, right? So I'm going to drag and drop my dimension here. Maybe let's go for the product name. So it shows for each product what's the value I have, right? So same as the previous, this works perfectly fine. But in some cases, your business user come and say that, okay, there's some issue in here. Okay, I'll show you do changes here. I think I forgot to do a change here. Let's forget about it. So if they come and say that, okay, there's a issue in one of your measures, can you go and find it? Okay, let's say that you have not developed this model, someone else has to develop the model, and you have no idea of what's the formula and how it's calculated, and you have no of testing, right? Only thing you can do is you can drag and drop the Power BI and see with the different filtration, go to your expressions and see, right? But what I can do is like, I want to analyze my measure and see how it's worked. You don't have it in the Power BI. Only thing you can do in Power BI is you can get the DAX formula behind my visualization. How do you get it? You can go to the performance analyzer and you can start recording. And let's say that you do some changes and it will record your query, and here go the DAX query, and you can copy that query as well. So this is the only thing you can get from the Power BI. But if you go to the external tool, I'm going back to the DAX Studio. That's something I use most. It will open up the DAX Studio and it will connect to your model and it will allow you to do a lot of things when it comes to DAX. Right. So if you open the DAX Studio, it will show all the tables available in here, as well as it shows some other tables which you don't see in here. The reason is like all those date tables are actually created from Power BI behind the scene. So when you have a date column available in the Power BI, it will automatically create a auto date calendar for you, right? And it shows in here. So how, just apart from this demo, I will show you. For example, if you have a stop date, stop sale date, it is actually a table for the Power BI. It creates a table for you and it takes space. It's unwanted space if you don't want to do an analysis in here. So how you want to stop it? It's very easy. So go to the files, go to the option and settings. There it is. Oh, sorry. Go to the something. You need to make sure that you don't use space. So there's something called auto time integers for new files. So whenever you create a new files, if you have checked this one, it will create a one date table for each date column you have defined in Power BI, right? So if you have a date time column in your model, it's actually a table for the Power BI. That's why you see all of this heap of load date tables. And if you don't want Power BI to take those space, and if you don't want, you are worry about the space in your model, you basically can disable those one, and it will be a normal date time column rather than in the date time hierarchy, right? So that's one thing I want to show when I show the model, right? And apart from that, Power BI DAX Studio is connected to your model, and you can start writing query in text. So if you are a beginner to the DAX, I think the best tool is use the DAX Studio. You can drag and drop any of these and start writing DAX. You have a good IntelliSense. For example, if you want to see what's available in here, just write evaluate, and it shows you all the queries. You can write start queries. So you have all the functions available in here. I have still the same problem. Yeah, you have functions you can use. You can drag and drop those functions, and you have you can start using those functions, because if you don't know what's the available functions, you have that information as well. And you have a DMV, the one I talked about. For example, let's say that you want to see all the meshes available in your model. Just a matter of you drag and drop TMS schema measure, and it will create a select statement, and you can run it here, and it will show you all the meshes available in your table and along with the expression. So you can get all those information from your model as well using DAX Studio. But that is not what I want to actually show, right? What I want to show is like, okay, if I have a query which take time, how can I troubleshoot from your DAX Studio, right? So I remember I copy and paste my query, copy my query in here, and I'm going to paste it here. So this is the query generated from the Power BI, right? So if I execute this one, it will give the same data set. Apart from these metadata columns, it will give me the same data set is showing in here, right? The next problem is, how do I do the troubleshooting? So this does not show the actual measure available in my column, which is universal online sales. So what you can do is like go to the measure here, which is this one, and I can say that, okay, add that measure into my code. Right click on here and say that define measure. If I click on this one, that measure will come to my code. Now what I can do is I can change this the measure that I have written, and I can change this measure and do my troubleshooting. For example, I say that, okay, there's something wrong in here, whether I want to make it multiplied by 100 and see how it works, right? It will give you value as it is. But if you try doing the Power BI, it's really difficult, right? You have to do some changes and see at the drag and drop things. Likewise, you can change all the measures here. Not only that, if you see that the way you have written docs is really bad, as in like it's not formatted, just click on the format query, and it will make your query look nicely. And then you can copy it here. You can write the query in here. You can format the code in here and copy and paste to the Power BI as well. So that's one thing you can do in the DAX. You can write the DAX queries. You can troubleshoot your DAX queries. Not only that, if you say that, okay, there's a performance issue in your query, there's very little information Power BI gives to you when it's come to the performance of your query. What you can do is there's something called query pan and server timing, which is given by the DAX Studio. So if I select these two, right, and if I execute this query again, it will take some time. And it will have another two tabs available in here called query plan. If you are coming from SSAS Tabular Model development background, you might have some idea for interpreting this query plan, but most of us are not. So there's something called server timing, which gives you information about how each query executed against your tabular model, and how much is actually used your formula engine, how much is used your storage engine, and how much it actually use cache. Like you see that 75% of your queries taken the cache. And if you want to see how the performance when the model is not using cache, that's something tricky, because whenever you run the query, it can be coming from the cache because you don't see an issue, but business user, whoever logging into the initially, he might have an issue. What you can do is you can clear the cache, right? So it will clear all the cache in your model, and then you can run the queries. It will take some time to clear the cache. See whether it's clearing. Yes, if cache is cleared, then I'm going to run the query again, right? Now let's see. You see that no cache is in use because I've cleared the cache. This is new execution against your formula engine. And you can see that how much is used. Now is 81% 8 formula engine is used, and the 18% 2 is storage engine. So if you're going back to, if you're going depth to the performance analysis of the Power BI, you know that formula engine is single threaded. You need to, it's a very powerful engine, but you need to use storage engine as much as possible. It's because it's multi-threaded. So you need to have an idea, okay, how much my query is using formula engine, what are the changes I need to do to avoid it using the formula engine, how to make my query multi-threading. It gives you that information, right, which is not available in the Power BI, right? And yeah, so again, apart from that, you can use this DMVs functions. You can write your own queries when it comes to the DAX Studio. And the one I showed you, it gives you, opportunity to analyze the storage as well using the multi-pack analysis. Not only that, like let's go in here. I think you can do heap of other things in here, like dump measures, or if you've written a queries, I think you can get it for the there's something called, where is it? Output. So when you got the output, whenever you write the queries, you can download the query. Like if you want to get the data set from the Power BI, there's a limitation of data set. I think when you export it to the table, there's a limitation. But in here, it does not have a limitation. You can export pretty much a lot of, like, I don't say all the data. It can cause memory exceptions, but you can, I think, export a lot of data available in the Power BI using this. Right? You write the queries and you can extract those to the files as well. Right? So I think DAX Studio, I think I covered the DAX Studio. The next important thing is, okay, let's say that I'm done. I've created the report. I don't have any issues. I fixed my issues. Maybe I copy and paste the formatted queries I get from here. And then that everything's done. The next thing I want to do is, okay, I want to deploy my model, which I create for business user, to Power BI, right? So when it's come to the deploy the model to the Power BI, we have only one way of doing that. You can go to the, over here, you can go to, where was it? Publish, right? You can publish the model. But when it's come to the Power BI, is either everything or nothing. And if you have a 700 MB of file, it takes a lot of time when you want to deploy. Let's say that you only did a modification to your measures, which in my case, I did not change the data, but I only did change the metadata operations, like adding new measures, changing columns, which has nothing to do with my data. So I don't want to take hours to deploy my measures. I just want to make it quick because I didn't do any data changes. Let's go to the cool tool called AML Toolkit. So what AML Toolkit does is, like, it allows you to compare two PBL files. It can be, the file can be in your local or file can be in your service, right? Only problem is, with the file is in service, it's only work with XML protocol, which means that it's only work with the dedicated capacity. It means that now that most of you have, like, it will be available for you, that Power BI premium for the individual users, right, per user. But in that case, you can use this. Or if you have two PBS file in your local storage, still you can do that. So what I've done is I have the file in here and I have another file in my production, which I did not change as it is in 700 MB file. It will ask you to connect to your service, and then I connect to my service and it will ask me which data model you want to connect. I have a Power BI prod. This is the prod. If I go to the Power BI service, I'll show you my model in Power BI service. It's a bit difficult when I don't have two screens. Connect. Yeah, let's go in here. So this is the model I have in here. So Power BI model, demo model prod, which is actually a 700 MB file which I started. If you go in here and see all the, I go to here and see edit here, you will see that is as it is how I was. All these columns are there. I can't make it bigger. And all those unwanted key columns are there. This is the initial state that I started, that I want to deploy all my changes to the service. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to my model. This is my model right now. Click OK. And I'm going to do a comparison between what's available in my desktop version and what's available in my service. So it will take some time to do the comparison. Okay. So what AML toolkit does is like it bring the data in the metadata available in your service, and it bring the data available in your model and do a comparison. Okay, these are the things you have done changes, right? So easiest thing is you can see all those things. Just to make it clear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that hide object with the same definition, which means that hide the objects which I have not changed in my model compared to the model in my production, right? So if I click this one, it will show you, okay, these are the things that you have changed in your model, which is not there in the production model. So you have an idea, okay, these are the changes that I have done. These are the changes, these are the things that I created. These are the things I updated. So you can have a look on that one. Now, it gives you a feature, say that, okay, whether you want to deploy all your changes to production or you want to select certain changes. For example, like I want to select all those changes because it's matter to me. But let's say that this measure that I created, unit cost, none of these columns I'm going to use to my business. I have done this one. Maybe it's not ready for the production, right? So I don't want to deploy this measure set to the production because it's not ready. I'm not tasked. So I have not done tested, but all other things are done and tested. Business user want to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this one. I'm going to say that skip selected objects. So don't make these measures available in the production. And then I'm going to validate my selection. And it will go through all those changes I have done. See is there something that breaks your model, and if not, it will not say that there's. It will, if there's any issues, it will say there's a warning there. If not, it validate all the changes, right? So let's see what's going to happen. It goes through all the measures and to the validations. I have done a lot of changes to my model. Okay, good, no issues. Then it allows me to update my model in the production. Let's click on this one. Are you sure you want to update the target? Yes, I want to, and click OK. And let's quickly go to the service and see what's happened to my service over here. Okay. See it progressing. So it gives you flexibility to do a process if you want to process the data, which means that refresh the data. But remember, I didn't want to. I just said that I don't want to process the data, so it's finished very quickly, right? And go back to the service, right, and see what has happened. Go back to the. I have to open it again, maybe.
It's almost like staging a website.
Yep. So go back in here. Why it's not get refreshed? Refresh in here. Yep, I just refresh in here, so I forgot to refresh it. Yep. So what happens is all those changes are here. All those changes I did in here without any changes. And if you can see there, the one I selected, which is unit cost, shouldn't be here. If not, all other things should be here. Right? So I don't have my unit cost measure, which I excluded, but it's available in my development, but it's not in my production. So in that way, you can do the changes. You can select which things you want to go. It's not all or one scenario. You can pick what you want and you can deploy the changes you want. And you don't want to process. You don't want to deploy all the changes as well. You don't want to deploy all the data as well. Just the measures and columns, the metadata operation you did. That's super cool.
So are you using that feature of ALM Toolkit regularly?
Yeah, I actually used this heavily when I was working on the tabular model objects, the SSA's tabular model. And the problem you have, as I said, you cannot use it with the service when you don't have a dedicated capacity.
Yeah, so I was wondering, do you then, kind of fudge that by having two local files?
But the other thing is
that,
yeah,
picking that up and publishing that.
Yeah. So the other thing you can do is like you can have two local files. One is actually you download one to the production and do the development, and you compare these two, and then you do the deployment to the production and then deploy that one to the here. Right? In that case, you still have that problem. You have to deploy with the data, but that's only problem. But when you don't want to, select all the measures, you don't want to push all the metadata operations, you can use that approach. Cool. Right. So all done. Then I'm going to. My all changes are there. I selected what I want to, and if you want, you can do the documentation of what are the changes as well. There are a heap of things you can do. So what I'm asking you to do is go back home, play with these tools, and see how it fits your scenario. Right Now, the next thing most users ask me to is document my model, right? You want to document your model and give you having a document somewhere. Yep.
So could you shift that connect to CTS hub to the right hand side?
I have to from here, right?
On that one, just right over. Yeah.
Yep.
So I couldn't see what.
Yeah, cool. Yep. Right. Then.
Two questions. One question: does this ALM toolkit work only in premium?
It's working in the premium and embedded. It does not work in the pro because it does not allow you to do the XML protocol. Read right.
Thank you. The second one: does this integrate with Git?
AML. What do you mean by? I don't think AML is integrated. If you got the, I hope they're asking about the code of this application. I think DAX Studio and the Tabular Model is integrated with JIT, which means that you actually can modify the code. I have the code with me. If you are .NET developer, you can contribute these applications. The code is available. You can debug you want. You can play with this code. But AML is, I'm not sure about that. I think it's written by Christian Wade, and I think it's his own. I'm not sure. Chris, do you have any idea about with AML?
I think he's talking about more tracking changes in your model over time.
No, I don't think so. There's no. No, I don't think so. You have to do your own documentation that way.
Show us. Then you said have a play and you showed us some tools.
Sorry?
You said when you go home, have a play and you clicked on the tools. What you clicked on? I didn't see what they were.
Oh no, I said that like AML toolkit. That said like again all the tools that I talk here apart from the Power BI helper, which I'm going to discuss next, is available in here. So you can go in here and download these files. And most of the tools like DAX Studio, Tabular, these are open source code, which means that you can have the solution and you can play with that if you are a .NET developer, right? Cool. Then the next requirement comes to me is most cases document your model, right? So that's what I'm going to use is Power BI helper. So the Power BI helper is actually a pretty much combination of all these things I showed you. It gives you a lot of information about what your model is. For example, like let's connect to my model. So if I connect the model, it open up the model available right now. It gives you information about your tables. It shows you what are the tables available and what are the there is hidden, if there is description and everything. And if you click on one column, one table, it shows you all the columns and what are the information in that columns, formattings, when it's modified, all the metadata about your column. And if you go to the measures, it shows you, okay, let's say click this measure. It shows you what the measure is, what's the formula of those measures. You get all the information. This is basically one place you can see everything about your model when it's come to metadata, right? And additionally, when it's compared to the other tools, this gives you information about your visualization as well. If you select a model, like let's go for, I'm not sure whether I have any report with the visualizations. This have more visualization. Yeah, so I have a one report which has a pivot grid and slicer. So it gives you information about your visualization, how many visualizations are there, and what are the tables visualization using this visualizations. So you have an idea like whether this table is used in my visualization or not. Right? So that information is available in your here. And if you other thing is it gives you information about your M queries, which I have not written, but it gives you information about your M queries as well, the visual trees, and it gives you information about your model advice, like if you have any advice whether it's best practices or not. And again, DMBs. I talked about DMBs. Rather than dragging and dropping one DMB, you can select whatever the DMB you want. For example, if you want to see what are the roles, just click on this DMB. It will show with what are the roles available. If you want to see what are the data sources, if we go to what are the measures available in here, as I showed in previously, hierarchies.
Talking about is that for row level security.
Yes, the roles available in your model. When you remember, like when you go to Power BI, you can create roles here. Here, I can see the roles. Yeah, you can define roles here, manage roles. All those roles information can be viewed in one place like that. Because it's just metadata about your model. For example, like I wanted to show how it looks like when you click on the measures, TML, measure. Again, columns, just click on that one, it will execute the DMB and show you the information, like this one. If I click on the TMS measures. It will show you all the measures available in your model and what's the measures with the expression and everything is available in here. So it gives you all the information about your model in one place. But the thing I use most is the documentation. For example, the documentation part. So if you go in here, export to document, it will create a nicely formatted document about your model, right? If I click on this one, documentation is done. And let's go here. This is my documentation. So it actually create a nice document about my model. Obviously, I'll show you who has done this one. This gentleman and his team has done this one. So it gives you information about visualizations and the tables it's been using and nicely formatted in a table. So you can send this one to your business session that this is my model. This is if you want any information, everything is available in here. Right? So it gives you information about measures in nicely formatted way. It gives you information about columns, queries, visualizations. If you spend your time in modeling in the document in your model, you spend a lot of time, but just a matter of you connecting to the Power BI helper and document your model. And you can share it to your business user saying that this is your model, have a look at that one, right? So that's how much I'm going to present here. Is there anything I messed up? No. So what I want you guys to do is like, oh, that's one thing I want to do. So I want to, grateful for these people who has developed this. So this DAX Studio is initially started by SQL BI and then Darren do the development with the community. So it's a community-driven application. People contribute to that code, and Daniel do the tabular editor, and Christian Wade he's do the AML toolkit. So they are individual people who comes as a team and do these amazing tools freely available. There's no cost for this one, and you can start using it. And they have given the code as well. And obviously, Reza and Layla, Radcat, they have developed the Power BI helper. They have put your effort, they have put your time, and they have given this for free. I think we should really be grateful for their effort and time because it's really helped our time. If you check that the amount of work I did, it will take few days, maybe a week to create, all those renaming, small things, but take times. Small things, I think actually will take times. Creating the time measures, creating a new measures, and do the troubleshooting. It takes a lot of time. Right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm on time. I have 6 minutes left. Is there any questions?
Do you know of a way to apply DAX formatter across all your DAX measures in a model?
Okay. If you go to the tabular model, I think you can. But again, you have to select the each query.
Like you can do them one by one.
Yeah, you can do one by one. Let me check. I think you can, but let's try. I can't see my. Must everything again. Step tools, tabulator. I think you have DAX formatter here, but again, you need to go one by one. If you select this one, and there's the one there. Yeah, you can click in here as well. You can format the DAX. But you need to select one by one. But what everyone does is like there's a site called daxformat.org, something I can't remember. So they call the API and bring out the result. So what you have to do is you can click on individual measure and click this one.
So Simmark actually wrote one last blog post that he used some
C#
code using the Visual Studio code and using the DAX formatter API.
Yeah.
It just run through all of your measures and automatically fix it.
From Visual Studio though?
Yes, yeah. Visual Studio code, so it's not like the big Visual Studio,
small Studio code, yeah. Yeah, but if not, if you go to the tabulator, you have to select one by one and click on this one. I'm not sure whether there's a way to do it. No, I don't think so. I have not used that. Maybe there's a way, maybe not, but if not, we have to select one by one and do the formatting. Yeah. Yep.
So you said in order to add these external tools to Power BI, we have to create a JSON file?
Not really. If it's not available only, but what happens is like all this external tool, they create those JSON file by default and add it to the folder If any case is not available, only you need to do that. If you install AML Toolkit, Jack Studio, I think even the Power BI Helper, Tabulator, they actually, as installation, they put that file into that folder and it should be available there. So you don't have to do anything. In case, if you are developing your own, if that file is not available, if that, they have not support right now, you can do that by using the JSON file.
So what was that folder?
I think I showed it. Oh, I can't see the full screen again. Here, this call shard. I can show you. Open it in here. This here. So Power BI desktop external tools. So all those installation by default they put a file to here, so it will be available for you. If not available, only you need to do that modification, or if you're developing your own tool.
There's perspectives that you can see
yes.
in Tabular Model.
Yep.
What are perspectives?
Okay, the perspective is actually coming from the concept from the SSAS. It came from the multidimensional, and it came from the tabulator as well. It's just not security feature. It's just that you can see certain things, just more like a logical container. For example, like let's say you have a business user, and that business user complains that you always see all the dimensions, measures not related to him. He sees the HR dimensions, he sees the finance dimensions, he sees all the dimensions. We expand his model, but he only work with the, like, I'm not saying that he only work, he rarely work with all those dimensions. He's mostly work with his own categorizations. So what we do is, like, we create a perspective. It's a logical container. You bring dimensions, fact, which is only required for that person. But it's like HR. You have HR perspective, which have HR measures and HR dimensions related. It's a logical container. And then you can, right now in Power BI, you can set that when you're creating a new visualization, only this perspective can be enabled, or you can only modify, or you can only play with this perspective. But the idea is, like, you need to kind of a filtration, high level filtration for your model. That's the perspective. Did I answer your question? You need more clarification. It's basically
a little bit.
Yeah, it's more like a container.
That sits in the model, or
it sits in the model. It's just a logical container, logical folder, which it shows you that all the related things which make a sense for a particular person.
Okay, so for that particular person, if they're in that model,
yes,
they can see everything.
They can see everything. It's not a security feature.
The way that it's,
yes, it's not a security feature. Yes, it's not a security feature. You can see everything. Only thing is, it's more organized. And if you go to the Power BI right now, they're available when you do, what's this feature called? Customize your own visualization. There's a feature called that when you're creating a report, individual business user can customize that business use, report that they want to. They can drag and drop measures and they can view that report. But if you have a perspective, you can say that this visualization only supports this perspective, right? For example, like, you can go here. If you go to the properties, set in there something called, where's that one? Aspect, I can't remember in here. What's that feature? Just can you remember where you set the perspective, or when it's come to the can't remember. Yeah, I basically can't remember. So what it does is, like, it allows you to customize your visualization. But if you define a perspective, you can say that only this perspective can be visualized, analyzed from this user. It's just not a security feature again. You can see everything, but in a more organized manner.
Saying that in Tabular Editor, there's a script for formatting DAX codes.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's nice. Oh, yeah, that should be. Let's check if it's available in here. God. Uh-oh. Did a mistake. Yeah. So this is good measures, time intelligence, writing perspectives. Yeah. So this one, yep.
Awesome.
So you can select copy on that one. You can format the next expression. Yep, it's cool. Any more questions?
Okay, that's great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Time?
We got a lot of thank you from here as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you everyone for coming here, and thank you for all of people joining online. You still have like 22 people online. That's it. Until next time.
Yep.
We'll get in touch with you. We'll close the online one, but you still can chat a little bit here if you want.
3 questions from you to the audience.
Oh, for the audience, right?
Because I've got a couple of small things to do.
Okay. Oh, that's crazy. I didn't prepare for that one.
Close the Teams window. Yeah.
Okay, I'll close it.
Okay. Yeah, we have some prizes too.
They're just random stuff. People give me stuff all the time. I just put it into a box. Sometimes I give the customers,